what can we do about the Supreme Court? That is a question that I keep hearing over and over again. A lot of people drop it in my comments, but it was also a question that was discussed at last week's What's the Plan call for Indivisible. And I want to expand on that issue a little bit, because I know it is something that is weighing heavy on everybody's minds, even if we have a blue wave in the midterms, even if we manage to elect a Democrat. And God, wouldn't it be wonderful if they were progressive in the presidential election in 2028? We still have the uber conservative 6 on the Supreme Court, directed by John Roberts, and they are lifetime appointments. They are basically untouchable. And while I am not an attorney, and I highly recommend Attorney Di or Brian ODC if you would like to hear attorneys discussing the constitutional implications of what the uber conservative 6 and their fringe unitary executive theory are doing to American democracy, yeah, go listen to those attorneys who are experts in that area. But as a layperson, I have thoughts, I have opinions. So allow me to expound on this for a minute, because I think a lot of people can feel really hopeless. The uber conservative 6, any member of the Supreme Court, any justice on the Supreme Court, that's a lifetime appointment. We saw Joe Biden have the potential to expand the court, and he didn't take it. We saw Ruth Bader Ginsburg hold on to her position when she could have retired under a Democratic president who would have replaced her with somebody who was not a fringe conservative that was desired by the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025. But she didn't do that. And, maybe this isn't the video where you want to hear me rip on Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I know a lot of my followers are big fans of hers. There is a very good argument to be made that harm has been done on all sides when it comes to creating a Supreme Court that is determined to make a monarch out of the president of the United States. And not just any president, not Joe Biden. Remember how Joe Biden wanted to cancel our student loans and the Supreme Court was like, well, bam, no. They just want to do it for Donald Trump. And Americans are rightly concerned that 6 people who are not elected have a lifetime appointment that they are using to help dismantle democracy and to install a monarch in the United States. We fought a revolution to get free of a monarch, and the John Roberts Court is doing everything that they can to hand tremendous power to the executive and basically reconstitute a monarchy here, which is why we've had the No Kings protests. My understanding is there will be another No Kings protest in the new year. More on that coming after the holidays, I believe. It just feels in many ways hopeless because we're watching the lower courts hold the line, invoke and enforce the law over and over again. We're watching the lower courts do the right thing, and people take a little breath like, yes, okay, the justice system is still working. It should be a check on the extreme power of the executive. And then the case gets bumped up to SCOTUS, and we have the 3 reasonable justices issuing blistering dissents as the Roberts 6 go ahead and, they're undermining, overturning what the lower courts have done time and time again, making these rulings that are frankly shocking. We see constitutional law experts all over the place who are shocked at the rulings that come out from the Supreme Court so far last year and this year. And they're using the shadow docket. It's lots of unsigned opinions. It's lots of really sketchy rulings late at night with no signature and no really good explanation, no good foundation for their ruling. What do we do when the executive is hell-bent on becoming a dictatorship, stealing power from the other branches? The legislative is currently controlled by Republicans who have decided to be collaborators with fascism and freely hand over all of their power, refuse to check the executive, hand over their power of appropriation, sit on their hands and refuse to exercise their power to impeach, to check not just Donald Trump, but other members of the executive. And then we have the courts overwhelmingly holding the line, but SCOTUS does not. SCOTUS, Republicans in the legislative and the executive all working together to overthrow democracy. That's something that the founding fathers did not envision. And it feels like none of the checks and balances are working when the legislative and the judicial are refusing to do their constitutional duty and act like a check on the executive. And of course, this is why I say elections have more consequences than you realize. I held my nose and voted for Hillary Clinton because I understood that there were likely going to be a number of Supreme Court seats that Donald Trump was going to fill. And those are lifetime appointments. And that's why we're here now, right? You understand there are so many factors that are at play, but we are here now because of the Supreme Court. If there is one entity, one factor that could have ground all of this to a halt, it's the Supreme Court. Likewise, although the mechanism is far more complex, right? Because it has to do with elections all over the country. Likewise, Republicans in the legislative, in Congress, at any time could have checked Donald Trump. We get a chance to vote all these fuckers out in the midterms. Yeah, they're trying to gerrymander. Yeah, they're trying to suppress the vote. Yep, absolutely. They're going to try hinky shit in the midterms, but we still have the power to vote. When it comes to the Supreme Court, it's like, what power do we have? The president appoints those folks. Congress went ahead and confirmed those folks. So that was all the checks and balances that we get. And now they're just there forever, implementing their fringe theories, wanting to create a white Christian nationalist, Christo-fascist state in the US. What can we do? So this is sort of the setting for the question that was posited in the What's the Plan call. And Ezra talked about this extensively. And I have said this before. I tend to agree with Ezra like probably 95% of the time. And his response to this question really aligned with where I'm thinking. So let me share what he had to say. And of course, I'll add in my own thoughts as well. The question was, is the biggest issue Trump or is it SCOTUS? Do we actually have any power when it comes to the Supreme Court? So Ezra said John Roberts isn't currently worried about court reform, either expanding the court or setting term limits to the court. By the way, both of those are quite popular if you poll the American people about it. So he feels like nobody can stop him. Roberts feels untouchable at this moment in time. Here's why. He doesn't think that there is actually a coherent opposition party standing up against the regime that wants court reform. We actually can pressure the Supreme Court. We, the people, actually can have an impact on the Supreme Court. And it comes through our representation in Congress, and it comes through our advocacy through grassroots organizing. Ezra said, if John Roberts thinks that we, the people, can get 52 votes in the Senate to enact court reform, he'll start dialing it back real hard. I keep getting this question, why is it that we're not impeaching members of the Supreme Court? Particularly Clarence Thomas, because, right, there's been a lot of reporting out about the potential ethical conflicts that Clarence Thomas has had. And my understanding is that to impeach a justice of the Supreme Court, you need a supermajority, a 2/3 majority in the Senate. And the likelihood that we are going to get 60 votes in the Senate to impeach is very, very low, but you only need a simple majority in order to get court reform, meaning expanding the number of seats on the Supreme Court or potentially setting term limits. So Ezra's point was that until you have a coherent opposition where Democrats show that they are willing to extend political capital and expand opposition and demand court reform, John Roberts isn't going to behave differently. If he feels like there is a high likelihood the people want it, elected officials are willing to expend political capital on it, to expand the court by like 3 seats where he will suddenly be checked, his fringe unitary executive theory is not going to be advanced the way he thinks, he's going to be changing his rhetoric. Right now, he feels that nobody is standing in opposition to what he's doing, and there is no coherent political movement for court reform. So this is where we come into play. This is where our power comes into play, and we can actually enact change here, and we can still have a check on the Supreme Court. Take your fear and your anger, however scared you are about what SCOTUS is doing, however enraged you are that they are using their power to very sneakily, through the shadow docket, dismantle democracy. Take all of those feelings, all of that energy, and demand that your Democratic representatives address this fundamental threat to democracy. The uber conservative 6 on SCOTUS are a threat to democracy. Ezra was saying any candidate running right now in a Democratic primary needs to be asked directly, repeatedly, do you support expanding the court? Do you support term limits for the court? What is your plan for the Supreme Court? Particularly if you live in a blue district, a blue state, and your reps and your senator are up for re-election. You need to be grilling those guys. Hey, what's your plan? Every town hall, every stop on their re-election campaign, what's your plan for SCOTUS? What's your plan to deal with the problem of the uber conservative 6? Do you support court reform? If they see that we care about it, they're going to start to do their math and think this is something I should be expending political capital on. This is something that people want me to do. This is something that can earn me a vote from folks in my district and in my state. We need to make it a priority because that's where we have power.